Hello, it is the Anfield Wrap with me, Beth Lindop, joined today by Salmon, by Josh Williams and by Damian Kavanagh after a Liverpool win. Christmas miracle, 1st of December. Liverpool have won a game of football. West Ham United 0, Liverpool 2. It feels very nice to be sat here on a Monday morning with a little bit of positivity to talk about. But before we jump into the game, Liverpool have got back in the saddle in terms of winning games. And if you want to get back in the saddle, Peloton. The Anfield Wrap, the Anfield Wrap flagship show is in association with Peloton, Liverpool Football Club's official cardio and strength partner. Now today is Cyber Monday, and to celebrate, Peloton are offering up to £550. Sorry, I even underestimated how good it was. £550 off their cross-training series and bikes. This offer is only running until December the 8th, which is my birthday actually. So, I mean, anyone watching who wants to get me a birthday present, you know what to do. So head on over to onepeloton.com to unlock a great deal. Now on with the important stuff, the football. Ian, it felt like a huge win yesterday. I mean, obviously, everything that we sort of say today will come with a caveat of if it's only West Ham and it's only one game, but it did feel like a big one.
Yeah, I don't care if it's only West Ham. I don't care if it's... Well, I care that it's only one game because it's like, don't get too excited because we had Villa and we had Real Madrid and they were both fantastic and then everything went to hell again. But yesterday felt like a hard game. There was nobody who went in thinking... We all basically thought this could be a loss. This could just keep going on. And we went in and we were just eminently sensible and very boring and brought back a measure of control. And I was sitting there in the first half watching it going, this is just a really dull game of football. Thank God. And I felt great at the fact that nothing was happening for long stretches. And it did look like one of those days where nothing was happening. And the bits that did happen, the goalie was going to have a worldie and we won't be denied anything from it. But it came together great and the team looked good. People who had been criticising all season looked really good all of a sudden. It just felt massively sensible. It was exactly what we needed.
Yeah, exactly what the manager needed as well, Damian. It felt like after that defeat on Wednesday night, we could be approaching sort of untenable territory, really, as much as I don't think any of us want that to be the outcome. It felt like, you know, he was maybe a few defeats away from a really difficult decision having to be made. And, you know, he looked quite relieved, I thought, yesterday. He said himself in his press conference that he felt relief at the full-time whistle. I mean, for him and in terms of his future, it was a big one.
Yeah, massive because of the situation that we were in. It was like a training match, wasn't it, to be honest? And so I think Slot needed it as much as the players, possibly more so. I really like Slot. I really do respect him, etc. But I think he might have been a bit stubborn in the journey that's got us to here. We've had a couple of little peaks in that, you know, with the Villa game was great and the Real Madrid game was great, but there was problems that came back all too quickly. And last year was just that measure of control that we had, and it was markedly different, even with Jurgen's players, that the team was more controlled. And he had to get back to that, and we did it against Arsenal at home. But the team really did stick to the plan, and so they might have been nervous, but I wasn't watching it, sipping a Murphy's, thinking, this is one. Do you know what I mean? Not because it was arrogant or anything like that, but you could just see. And Liverpool's won a million games like that, just going away and shutting up shop and things like that. There was a pivotal moment for me, really, being a bit geeky, in the second half. There was about 10 minutes to go, and we were on the counter. And Szoboszlai was the ball, possibly for Jones, I can't remember now, but gets it, and the ball's on, the counter's on, and it's like, here we go. There's no, you know, this is a great chance for another goal. And Szoboszlai was like, got the brakes on, turns back in, we're holding this.
Yeah, I know.
And I thought that moment, they're sitting there just drinking and watching it quietly, I thought, yep, they've got the message here. So I don't want to be hugely critical about it. You know, it's been a horrific run, but all credit to what we've done before, and there's been a number of things wrong and they've all happened at the same time and it's contributed. And I do sense that the players were nervous and that the manager was nervous, but it was great sitting there watching it, not being nervous, because then if you take out the emotion of it and just sitting back and watching it and you're not in the stadium and you're looking at it and you just think, yeah, this is clearly the best team playing at low gear. I mean, they were a gift, West Ham, yesterday, but that's where things start, isn't it? Yeah. The first step. And so, yeah, I think they'll all realise that they are dead good players who've got loads of medals, who are worth loads of stuff. And if we stay, I don't necessarily think we need to be overly cautious, and maybe it's not as cautious going forward all the time, because we have got some real game changers and dangerous players and whatever. But it's also noticeable Virgil was just bollocking everyone, wasn't he? If anyone got anywhere near half a shot and that, so it's obviously back to zero, make sure it's a clean sheet and the rest will come. And so, quite frankly, it's not just a question of winning, but to get to half-time and it was 0.
Yeah.
That felt like the first rung to me, and the rest just followed.
I found that the weird thing for me at the end was those last 12 minutes got really, really nervy. But I was watching it feeling terrified, thinking, when I rewatch this, if I rewatch this, nothing will have happened.
No, it wasn't.
And they won't have threatened us, but I was still terrified that something's about to happen, but nothing did.
And if you'd watched it being a West Ham fan, you'd be sitting there thinking, should have gone home, because there was no threat.
Yeah.
It's not so.
Damien mentioned, Josh, that the manager made some big decisions. He makes 4 changes from midweek. The biggest sort of headline news was that Salah was dropped. I think it's something that pretty much everyone over the past few weeks has suggested, has put forward as something that maybe needs to be done. Were you on board with that and the changes more broadly overall?
Yeah, I was half surprised he did it, if I'm honest. I think it's a huge call, and one of the problems you've got now, really, if you're getting onto the misery side of it, is he maybe has to start the next one now, which is a bit tricky. But, you know, benching a superstar like that is not an easy thing to do, and he's maybe got to a point where he thought, I've got no choice, it's away from home. I thought West Ham would put up a bit more of a fight than they did. They've got Diouf down that side as well, and Paqueta, so, you know, Diouf is overlapping all day, every day. Salah's probably not going to follow him. Szoboszlai did. You know, Gomez was a bit more stable over that side. I thought most of Liverpool's stability stemmed from just sorting out that right side. All season we've had different right backs in there, some midfielders in there. We've had Salah, who's like a bit of a dwindling star, maybe, who doesn't track back as much as he ever has, but also is not quite providing the product. So you've had a bit of a problem at the right side, and I felt like we solved that in this game and looked a lot more steady. And I think Ian's sensible is probably the word for the performance. I thought it was just I think last time you hosted when I was on a show, I distinctly remember saying, we need to stop being first on Match of the Day. And this was one of them games where, like, you know, maybe we'd be 6th, little 2-0, and I'll take that every day. You know, I think we were overdue one of them.
Yeah, well, I was surprised, actually. I did watch Match of the Day last night, and I thought Liverpool will be well down the pecking order, particularly with Arsenal-Chelsea. They were actually first, but I think probably only in the context of what has gone on in the last few weeks. And I agree, it was really important to get that kind of boring, sensible win. I was on a few shows with Neil last week, and he said, you know, it's so important for the players to maybe take the game in 15-minute chunks, and you know, the first 15 minutes, the most important thing was not conceding. And I think yesterday, not conceding that first goal was crucial.
It's absolutely massive. I mean, Arne said in his press conference afterwards, didn't he, the fact that he'd seen that we were still doing some of the same stuff that we'd done in the previous games, where we weren't finishing off our early chances, but the big difference was the other team didn't score with the first shot that they had for a change. So that's been happening for 6 weeks now. So just that solidity at the back. And the thing that surprised me was, I'm not entirely certain what the shape of the team was. It seemed to be kind of a 4-2-3-1, but it didn't quite work that way. And Gomez was playing a lot of football far higher up the right-hand side than I thought he was going to. I expect him to be sitting there as a traditional right back, in the same way that he'd used Jones in the Eindhoven game, which obviously didn't particularly work because we conceded 4 goals. But there was more movement forward on both sides, so we basically went 2 at the back. So we weren't just going in with the idea of absolute solidity and making sure it wasn't a backs to the wall, nonchalant pass sort of, and at no point will we allow anyone through. We were pushing the game forward all the time, but still remaining absolutely solid. And I think a lot of that was the 2 in midfield who were dropping into the middle between the 2 centre backs. So you saw a lot of Gravenberch dropping in there, but also a lot of McAllister dropping in there. So I think that shape, where it wasn't a traditional anything, the shape that we went in with worked really well. So I think just keeping that solidity. And I can't think of a point where they threatened us in the first half. I mean, we had a couple of chances in the first half. There's the save from Isak's shot, and there's the chance when Wirtz could have easily netted. But I don't remember West Ham doing anything in that point at all. The first thing I remember them doing is the Bowen shot that blazed over. Obviously, we also had the Isak blazing over the bar as well. But the fact that we went in, and it was just, the whole shape of the team was good. And I think one of the weird things was the role we gave Szoboszlai made Szoboszlai less prominent than he's been all season, and possibly less effective than he's been all season. But he just had a quiet, solid, do what needs doing game. It was very much a do what needs doing, get everything right and get the ball moving around. And the fact that, we'll obviously get on to Konate, but the fact that they were passing to Konate and Konate started passing the ball forward and then decided to have a couple of runs up towards the box, everything just kind of like, it just ticked into it wasn't a sudden click, this is how it works. It was like just ticking back into playing like a football team again.
Yeah, in terms of that balance, Josh, because I know obviously this season you've said quite a lot, the squad is quite unbalanced. And I think maybe some of the signings made and some of the departures in the summer have left the squad quite unbalanced. Do you think that yesterday is maybe a little bit of a model for how things should be going forward, or do you think you have to caveat it with it is West Ham, or were you pleasantly surprised by how balanced they looked at times?
I think it helped a lot on the balance side defensively. I think Liverpool for the first time, I've touched on it before, but for the first time in a while, it felt like we didn't have an obvious flank that teams should exploit. It felt like on both flanks we had a decent level of defensive solidity. The midfield was relatively compact. There was no passengers in the team you're carrying. Everyone worked. You had another centre half at the back, which helped Konate probably as well. Helped Liverpool with the 1v1s out wide. So defensively, Liverpool were really, really solid. I thought on the ball, the right side would become a bit of an issue. Ian's just touched on Gomez there in the wide areas. That's just generally not ideal when you think about it. If Gomez is the one holding the width on the flank and he's got all this space and you can potentially switch the play through him and then he gets engaged in a 1v1 or something, Joe Gomez is just not going to hurt the team doing that. So that's kind of what I meant when I touched on balance and stuff like that. Szoboszlai is not the most threatening. He's also right-footed, playing on the right. So I think in some game, if we keep doing this every single game, I think there'll be games where the right side teams just almost concede and they just go down. You can have that space. We're just going to take care of the centre and maybe the right for Liverpool. But it worked well defensively, and I think that was the main point for this game. I think that was the priority for this game if you want. And if you don't concede, it's very easy to just nick one, and that's what Isak did with a really good finish. And then you go from there then with a lot of control. But yeah, I think long term, I'm maybe thinking too long term here, but I think that would work quite well if you had maybe Semenyo in Szoboszlai's place. Then you still get the graft. But you'd have the defensive stability and stuff like that, but you'd have a bit more of a threat over there. I just didn't like the idea that Liverpool didn't have much threat on that side, but we didn't need it in the end. Yeah,
Josh obviously mentions Isak there nicking the goal. I mean, we'll get on to individual performances a little bit later on, but it felt like that goal came at a really, really good time. It felt like maybe the first time in the game that West Ham were growing in confidence. Not necessarily, again, like Ian said, it was one of those games. I was in the press box and it felt like that it was a little bit nervy a few times, but then when you actually look back, I think the West Ham created next to nothing. That Bowen chance was probably the only big one. But when you're on a run like this, you do worry. But I think it felt like West Ham was starting to think a little bit more like we can get our foot on the ball here. We can get at Liverpool a little bit. So it felt like the perfect time for Liverpool to take the lead.
I like what Josh said there as well. That's not the template going forward. That's not going to move us notch, right up into third place anytime soon. But it was just of its day. It was just a question of getting a foothold, wasn't it? The goal was a proper striker's goal. He just passed it into the goal, and that's when you see a real striker. You don't have to blast them.
It was quite similar to his finish against Liverpool in the Carabao Cup, wasn't it? The first time.
And as soon as it comes to him, he's just got the confidence. He knows where everything is in a moment in time and just puts it in the goal. Sound. It was just exactly what we bought him for.
Yeah.
And it's literally the space of a ball.
Yeah.
It's that size that you can actually get in.
I thought as well, considering he hasn't really hit the ground running at Liverpool, for him to take it first time, I thought is indicative of the confidence that he's still got in his own ability.
Well, he's got time you go, that's a striker.
Yeah. I think any striker that does well in the box usually takes the shots early.
Yeah.
I think I always go back. I remember Ancelotti said to Calvert-Lewin when he started working with him in Everton, he used Inzaghi as an example and said, if you want more than a single touch before you shot in the box, you've run out of time because there's going to be someone on top of you. So you need to shoot early. Inzaghi was a master at doing it, and Calvert-Lewin flew under Ancelotti.
Well, he had his best season under him, didn't he?
So I think it's really, really good advice that stuck with me ever since. And Isak taking a shot early, it results in the goal.
The ball beats the man.
Yeah.
And if you're good at it, Jogo, was great, Harry.
Yeah.
He really just, he'd come to it quick and just flash it at me in. And it was his goal, you know, a goal to grace any game, you know, from a real strike. And he didn't go bananas either after it. It was like, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
And I liked that.
It was a job done, wasn't it? And you look at it and go, that's what you pay the money for. That moment is literally why you cost 125 million, because there aren't that many strikers around doing that.
Yeah. And I think another point that leads to it is, and I don't think he didn't get the ball directly, but obviously we're going to talk about Wirtz. He was in the right places.
Yeah.
And he can go either side with the foot and he can just find that little gap and just push that little pass straight in. And, you know, so the idea of the two of those, that gives me a lot of confidence here, because it was like, I haven't bought this fella to play on his own and I haven't bought this fella to play on his own. I bought these two to play together and we haven't had that chance. But that really did show flashes of, if you've got someone who can just find that half a yard and play that pass that the other 21 players on the pitch can't play, and you've got a player who can put the ball in there like the other 21 players can't do, then you've got something to be going on with. So, you know, again, I go back to it was West Ham, they made it easy for us. It really was training match pace. You know, it certainly wasn't Upton Park. Do you know what I mean? It was West Ham at their worst and they have some bad times, but it's what we needed and we passed it unblemished. Great, loads of encouragement. And thinking about it, you know, just while we're talking here, I remember reading Gerrard's book and he was talking about being lacking in confidence at a time and he was just overdoing it and overthinking it. And McAllister said, don't do that, just give it to me. Wherever you're at on the pitch, just give it to me. Just to like get him back in the league and give it to someone who can look after it. And I think there was a couple of examples there, Kanate being a good shout there about being one of them. It was just get them used to being simple. Just go through the motions and get them in a rhythm of things instead of like overcomplicating and trying to force it. And I think we've been guilty of, and it's like anything in life, if it's not going well, you start trying almost too hard.
Yeah.
And we just needed a game where we didn't have to try that hard and the basics will work. And then from there, they're only humans and hopefully that confidence now leads us forward.
Yeah, I think that was really important. Someone said about Isak not really celebrating too much, not being emphatic, and spoke to both Virgil and Alexis McAllister after the game yesterday, and I think both of them were very keen to emphasise that, you know, this is just one win. It doesn't mean anything if they don't back it up. And I think, you know, there's been a lot of things levelled at Liverpool players over the past week, you know, do you talking on the pitch, which sometimes I think is a bit unfair because these players are contractually obliged to do a lot of these interviews and they have to come out and speak. And you'd rather them speak than just completely never say anything. But I think there was a real sense yesterday from both of McAllister and Van Dijk that, you know, this isn't this big renaissance. It's not maybe like the same feeling after the Real Madrid game where you thought, right, Liverpool are 100% back. I think there is this real conscious sense that Liverpool do need to back this up and go on a run, but this could potentially be a platform. Just on the 32 minutes between the two goals, Ian, they felt really, really important. I think someone alluded to it earlier on, but at the time when you're watching it, you feel quite uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But you look back and Liverpool actually probably manage it quite well in terms of giving very, very little away. And you almost think, listen, it would have been great to see them go there and win 5-0, but having a close game like that was probably, again, more pleasing in the sense that they didn't capitulate in the way we've seen them do at times over the past few weeks.
I think that's the most important part of it, because I think it's the fact that you can show that you can defend the lead, and the fact that we can remain at 1-0 for so long and not really be troubled until, as I said, the last 10 minutes, you started feeling a little bit of nervousness. I thought coming from the pitch, but probably just coming from me, to win with a second goal like that in the last minute, that's perfect for what we need at the moment, because you've defended for that long. It's not kind of like you've had 2 in 2 minutes and you killed the game off. You've had to stay in the game, you've had to stay focused, you've had to stay sharp, and you've had to control the whole thing. Just because West Ham, you know, as poor as we're saying they have got players who can hit you. You know, Jared Bowen is a good footballer. He scores goals. So when the ball falls to him and he's in space and he can get that shot off, you're expecting it to go into the top corner because he's a quality player. Paquetá, who... That might, you know, in a week where Everton had a player sent off for slapping their own player, that's the actual maddest thing I've seen yesterday. That's ridiculous. It's just unreal, isn't it?
He didn't even commit a foul.
He did nothing.
He got sent off.
He wasn't involved in the foul. He complained about somebody else committing a foul and the free kick being given. He gets a booking. And then the referee refuses to book him again for nearly a minute and a half. Well, he's just following around.
Allison intervenes.
Well, Liverpool's players were like, come on, mate. You're being stupid here. You're in danger of getting sent off for not on here. And he just wasn't listening. And, you know, I played a lot of Sunday League and I've seen a lot of that. And I was just sitting there watching it and I just, oh, fuck off, lad. He's just being stupid.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It really was that. And it was just, and it just, you know, it doesn't mean anything to us whether he gets sent off or that. And you want to win the game. And we didn't approach the game any differently after it. We just carried on. But he was a joke. I mean, you seen the look on the manager's face there. I just thought he'd be lucky if he's playing again this season. And he can be a good player on his day and that. But that was just an absolute joke. And then he's, you know, clapping the other officials on the word was against him there. And then I haven't followed all the coverage or something, but apparently he's come up with some kind of quote where what was it exactly? It was sort of like,
sorry, I'm not perfect. Was the way he ended that tweet, I think.
Yeah.
He's basically said, you know, I was hung out to dry for 2 years. Nobody supports me. I've had no support from the authorities. You know, I've gone through a lot, and I think this ridiculous behaviour is what I'm still going through. And it's kind of like, you know, I get that. You know, the lad would have been playing at Man City last season if he hadn't been banned. But he was banned for suspended for 2 years while the investigation went on. I didn't even realise it was that long, to be honest, but he said 2 years. So
he kept playing though, didn't he? He wasn't out for 2 years.
Yeah, he played.
Did he play for Sun?
He did play, but it was hanging over him.
And you can understand that. Don't get me wrong. Do not get me wrong.
So there will be
but when the opposition's players are saying, "Pack it in, kiddie," you're making a show of yourself.
Just walk away.
It's going to cost your team.
And
which is an exact quote, I'm sure, from
one
Alisson.
of them saying it to you in your own language, and it's the opposition goalie saying, "You probably want to stop doing this," you know.
Yeah.
I was a bit disappointed in Bowen. If I was a West Ham fan, at least, you know, I thought Bowen's wearing the captain's armband.
He should be dragging
and
away.
he just let him get sent off.
I'll get sent off myself.
Yeah. We just let him get sent off. Like, he was just watching him do it. I was like, mate, you've got to intervene. Surely you've got to do. Alisson was trying to keep him on the pitch more than Bowen was.
He probably did a better job, didn't he, Alisson, than Bowen? But in the end of the day, it helps Liverpool.
So they have got players who. I knew I was in the middle of a point somewhere there when I diverted. They have got players who can hear you. You know, it wasn't a gimme. It wasn't like we were playing a third division team in the FA Cup. It felt weirdly like an end of season game for the first half, but the concentration levels had to be there. You had to manage yourself through the game. It is that next 10 minutes, next 10 minutes, next 10 minutes. And now what we're on is next game. Don't think anywhere further than the next game. We can see where we are in the league. We're 8 points behind Arsenal now.
I thought it was 9.
9.
Yeah.
So
5 behind City.
Yeah. So it's not
incredible, isn't it?
It's not that far off, given that we were 13th yesterday morning, and we're up to the glorious heights of 8th at the moment by 1 goal. These things can change very easily. You know, who saw Chelsea suddenly creeping up? If Chelsea had won yesterday, they'd be within 3 points of Arsenal. So it's a long season, and the top 4 is still in sight. So just win the next game. Just win the next game. Just keep going like that. And we forced it too much. We forced ourselves into trying to get back out of this rut. And I think we tried too hard. So yesterday the idea, you know, I think one of the things that sums up, as you said, Szoboszlai playing back when we could have just gone for another goal to push it, to force it. No, we'll just keep hold of the ball because he can't do anything with it. But I think that the big key is Konate there, Gomez up there. So it wasn't like sitting Gomez next to Konate to look after Konate and let Konate know that, you know, he's looking after you and he's looking after you. Just letting Konate play his game, because we're not going to have a right back there all the time. The right back will be there. So getting him reassured that he can play the game in the position that's supposed to be played, in the state that he's supposed to be playing, that's going to be brilliant for the lad, because he's had a good game. He can come out of what he's gone through the last few weeks and go, yeah, I can do that. And the whole team shape just made sense. So it just makes sense for the next game.
We'll move on then to individual performances, and we'll start with Alexander Isak, because as we said earlier on, it's exactly, Josh, the kind of goal we saw him score at Newcastle. And again, he wasn't ecstatic after the game, and McAllister actually said, you know, afterwards that he's quite a quiet character. He likes to spend time on his own sometimes, but it does feel like that is exactly what he needed yesterday.
Yeah. I think it was a really well timed goal for him, and I think the finish is top quality. You know, we can't. It's one of them postage stamp ones in it where like he couldn't possibly pick more in the corner than it actually went. I thought his chance that he gets earlier in the game as well, I think he's unlucky with.
Yeah.
I think Areola makes a really good save, and
he couldn't do anything else there, could he? Really? Than what he did.
But I think generally speaking, you'd take what he ended up with there really for the most part when it comes to his product. Like I've seen online he was getting a little bit of criticism early in the game for like not being involved and stuff. But I think that's largely the plan, really. I mean, I think Damian said before about like the idea of Vert and Isak. Well, if Isaac's getting more touches by coming deeper, Wirtz is getting fewer because he's getting in his way. So I think you've got like a bit of a dovetail there where Isak is stretching the play, keeping the centre halves occupied, and as a result of that, creating little pockets for Wirtz to operate in. So, and I think I tweeted at the time, I think you need to get used to almost like what it's like to play with a proper striker. Because we were so used to Firmino, players getting constantly involved with build-up and that. Most nines, like Haaland and Isak and you know, these top players, they focus on finishing the move, and that's kind of it. He can get involved elsewhere, he can drift out wide, he can drop deeper, he's better than that. Better at doing that than someone like a Nunes previously. But if he's not involved possession-wise, I think it's fine as long as he's getting chances and finishing moves. And he did exactly that in this game. That's his main job, so really happy for him.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, Damian, about the sort of the not being involved thing, because I think Firmino was very much a number 9 without really being a number 9. He was very selfless, and he was integral to Salah and Mane doing what they did out wide. And then, you know, last season Luis Diaz plays a lot at false 9, who again obviously isn't an out striker, and Diogo wasn't really, like, as much as he was very clinical in the box, he was someone who could drop deep and stuff as well. And when you think how many times over the last few years have we heard people say, oh, what's Haaland done in this game? He's had 15 touches, but he's come away with 2 goals. And you think it maybe does take a little bit of time just to adjust to how Isak plays and the kind of profile that he is in comparison to players who've previously played for Liverpool.
Yeah, completely that. He's just an out-and-out number 9 of the modern-day version of it. I think it would have solved itself a lot quicker if he'd have been fit at the start of the season, and that makes such a big difference. And a lot of that's on him for his conduct and the way he engineered the move. Now, whether he'd have got the move anyway is another matter. But if he'd have been at it in pre-season at whatever club he was at, he'd have hit the ground running a lot quicker here. So I think it will now start to move up. But yeah, I think this is someone who sees his role in the team as in playing between the goalposts at the top of the pitch, occupying the centre halves, dragging people slightly, creating space for people, and then making sure he's in a position where if you can get a good ball in there, I'll make sure it goes in. So yeah, there's a whole load of adjustments that Liverpool have had to make this season, but what a problem it is to have.
Yeah.
You know, Liverpool signed the 2 most coveted people in the transfer window in the summer around Europe. You know, you think about who really was wanted out there in Europe, and who was wanted in the Premier League. You know, it was Isak. It's just a question of getting them going. There's no problem with it at all. I just think it's interesting. I don't know where it's going to end up because Ekatiké's been making a case, and Liverpool are most dangerous with him in it. Could you fit the 2 of them into the same team? That's another conundrum. But yeah, he was just understated, exactly what you want, no headlines. And like you say, you go back to Haaland or something like that, he touches the ball 3 times and he's got 4 goals, and you think, how's that work out? And I think that's what's going to happen with this fella here. I don't want him doing, I don't want him out on the left wing, and I don't want him dropping back into the middle. You said there before, didn't you, about Wirtz? Bought him for that. You stay up there, you occupy them, you give us a little bit of room, and then we'll get the ball to you. Nice one.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think there was a few moments as well, I think 2 come to mind. One was Wirtz and one was maybe Gomez, where there's a ball coming into the box in the next second or 2, and the demand really is for Isak to go near post and run near post, and he'll get a shot up if he does that, but he goes back stick and the ball doesn't come to him. But that's the kind of thing that will just come, you know, once you build relationships and you work with players for a certain amount of time, but with it being fresh, you're still working on harnessing that, you're still working on improving that, but you know, it's the kind of thing that will only get better in the final third, you know, with experience of the club and experience of your teammates.
That whole idea about no headlines really for Isak yesterday in terms of, again, his celebration, and a few of us had a conversation about this yesterday afternoon. I think he looks almost a little bit sheepish to me at times, and I think, you know, yesterday it was really noticeable at West Ham, as it has been for most games at most grounds this season. You know, it's not just Newcastle fans who want him to fail, it is the wider football world, because of everything that went on in the summer. And listen, we aren't party to anything that went on behind the scenes. You know, we don't know the full extent of what happened. It's fair to say that if a Liverpool player had done what he did, I think Liverpool fans would be frustrated, and you completely understand.
With the gone mental.
Yeah, you can completely understand the anger and the hurt and the betrayal from the Newcastle fans. But when he skies that effort early on in the first half, there's just jeers from all around the stadium. And, you know, I do feel to a degree, and again, you can argue and say, well, it's his own fault and it's the way he went about it. But I feel a degree of sympathy for him because it feels like he's not just battling against, you know, trying to get fit and trying to prove his price tag. It almost feels like the whole Premier League is against him a little bit, and that's maybe an extra weight that he's had to carry and he continues to carry.
Well, the rest of the Premier League hates us as a team anyway, so you know they're not going to warm to the player because he's come to us in the way he's come to us. He's going to have that, and you can't be unaware of it as a human being. You can't be unaware of the transfer fee that's being paid for you, what happened during the summer for you to actually get the move, and what people are going to think. You've got to be aware of it every time you go on the pitch because it's going to come at you. Fans are going to give them a hard time, probably for the rest of his career in England. Sound.
I think that'll stop if he gets in a routine and he becomes the player everyone expects.
Yeah.
And then people will be, well, they expect that he's a class player, isn't he? Yeah. But until he gets that number of games and that number of goals,
they'll still get on his back. So the criticism will stop, but they'll still go for him.
Yeah.
So opposing fans will always go for him. It's just you'll stop getting the media attention. If he gets 20 goals during the rest of the season, the media stops talking about it
completely
because there's no story anymore.
And that's it. And that's the only way out.
Yeah, and someone else who the media might stop talking about if he continues in the same vein as yesterday is Florian Wirtz. I mean, in terms of a 90-minute performance, certainly, well, not 90 minutes, he plays, how many does he play in the end? Nearly 70?
70 odd.
I think Arne Slot actually said after the game he got, the medical staff had recommended that he came off a little bit earlier, but he said sometimes you have to make an exception. And I think, you know, that the sort of performance that he put in yesterday, you wanted him to be on the pitch as long as possible and really, really encourage him.
Yeah, I thought he was brilliant. When he's like that, he's so good to watch.
Yeah.
He's a lovely footballer. So intelligent and got a lovely feel for the ball as well. Good in really small pockets, and he's the kind of player as well who he wants the ball. He wants loads and loads of touches, keep him involved. And I think you'll always benefit when you can dominate the game. If you've got the ball all the time, if you've got a real foothold in the match, Wirtz will shine always. But Liverpool haven't had that this season. He came into a bit of a broken side. We haven't been particularly functional at all, and he's maybe suffered on the back of that. But the better Liverpool become as a unit, the better he will look as an individual. I did get told, by the way, on the way in here today, that someone apparently commented on a video earlier saying, like, Josh said Liverpool shouldn't have bought Florian Wirtz. Total nonsense, by the way. That's not what I meant.
Fake news.
Yeah, that was me making a point as in, like, don't buy players if you haven't got a plan for them. And I think so far it's been a little bit ambiguous as to what the plan has been for Wirtz. But when you play him like that, you know, he accelerates the game for you when it's right to do so. He slows it down when it's right to do so. He sees the pitch and links to play with his first touch. Doesn't need to take loads, you know, doesn't chew the ball or anything like that. Honestly, if you give him the keys, he's only 22. Everything good will run through him. He might not get the last shot, he mightn't even get an assist, but everything good will run through him. And he'll dictate the rhythms of the attack and all that sort of thing. But I just hope now it's a sign of things to come.
Yeah, he is a joy to watch. And I think, to be fair to him, you know, again, he's faced a lot of external criticism because of the transfer fee. And, you know, he probably hasn't hit the heights in terms of the goals and the assists. But I think even, you know, for the most part, he's still been a joy to watch, even just maybe in flashes, smaller flashes than what you would like. But when he's on it, and when he, sometimes even in games where he's been quite poor on the whole, he's had a few touches and you've thought, that's Florian Wirtz, and you can see what he can bring, and it does now need to be a platform for him to go on and hopefully do that more consistently. Yeah,
the manager's got to earn his money here, and I agree with Josh there about that. You've got to have a plan, otherwise, you know, what's the point? It's a team game and it's all about that. Now he's one of those players that's got it in him where he looks like he's playing 5-a-side on an 11-a-side pitch.
Yeah.
And if you think back about, you know, you talk about great players in the graced the Premier League, Zola, you know, go back, you know, Liverpool would have Beardsley or someone like that, where literally, you know, imagine trying to get the ball off him in 5-a-side.
Coutinho as well.
Yeah, all those players that were better than that, actually. Better than that. So you've got to harness that. And so I don't like the idea of him being stuck out on the left-hand side. I think a player like that could then be physically intimidated if he wasn't put into the right place, and it's about the structure of it. And if Liverpool, the structure of the attack is it all ends in Isak scoring the goal, then this team has got to be designed to say it all ends in Wirtz giving the ball to Isak to score the goal. Now, I appreciate that can get extremely predictable and people can combat against that, but those players are that good, and that's got to be the main danger. And I think I do think that these players are being signed to succeed Salah, and we've bought players who are going to be here past him. And I think then we've got a genuine question about where Salah fits in if those two are going to play where they are. And there'll be games where we can and games where we should. We're talking about a genuine Liverpool legend, world superstar. And he is coming towards the end, and it's unfair to ask him to go Wednesday, Saturday, relentless, then go and represent your take the weight of your nation and whatever have you. You just need to be a bit more selective, and there will be games where you put them all on the pitch and we'll win 6-0.
Yeah.
And it'll be fantastic. But they'll come up against some smart teams or some big or aggressive teams. So it's just a question of they haven't found the solution yet, and Werther's looked lightweight. And I'm sure that would have hurt him. So it's just a question of Liverpool, and this is where Slot's got to come into it. Where do I get this lad on the ball in the right areas, but getting him central to the goal, but inside the lines of the penalty area, in the last third, he looks dynamite. Because it doesn't matter how many players there are there, if there's half a yard somewhere, he'll find it.
Yeah.
So that's the key. Get him on the ball.
The number of times yesterday, like he was in really small spaces, and you think, oh, he's going to lose the ball here, and then he just somehow it pops out, and he's passed it to another player, and you just think, how is he?
It's like subtle little flicks, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like with the outside of his boot, like it feels like he's never ever going to hit the ball with his laces.
Yeah.
In his whole career, it feels like everything's very delicate, everything's really subtle, incisive. But when you're playing against blocks, which Liverpool do very often. He's that kind of, though, he's like a needle player. He's like, he can thread the ball through the eye of a needle, and when he's on it, he is great to watch.
Yeah.
Well, that pass to Gakpo for the goal was stunning. Yeah. He's literally the only player on the pitch who's going to make that pass, because to have that vision, I think the Beardsley shout's a fantastic shout, because...
Which reminds me of...
Well, if Twitter had existed in 87, 88, they'd have... The response to how poor Beardsley was, how he was perceived for being for like the first 2-3 months, because he didn't settle immediately. There was people ripping him apart because he was a terrible footballer and we should never have bought him. And it's kind of like, and then suddenly he just turns back into Peter Beardsley. I think that was Werther's game yesterday, and that started at half time. That he'd had 4 successful passes to Isak in the half, and there's only been 3 all season up to now. Obviously, there's not a great sample size for it, but I think that meant everything about his game, because that is the plan. That's where you play him. You give him that freedom. And I was reading the Guardian report on the match this morning saying that he wasn't dominant in the game, wasn't he? Were you watching the same game as me? Because he ran that game.
Yeah, definitely.
He was perfect. It's like he's got the intelligence that Kenny had. He's got that same awareness of space and that same movement that Kenny had. He's a fantastic footballer.
We'll move into the other end of the pitch then, and someone else who had a really good game yesterday, Joe Gomez. I mean, you very rarely speak to anyone connected with Liverpool who doesn't have a good word to say about Joe Gomez in terms of his character, how professional he is. I was surprised he lasted the full 90, to be honest. I thought he'd maybe take him off. But he was great yesterday. I don't know if he actually officially gets the assist for Gakpo's goal. Don't know if it touches anyone else on the way through, but involved in Gakpo's goal was good going forward as well, and just defensively just added a real solidity to the back line.
Joe Gomez will never let you down. At any point in his Liverpool career, Joe's body's let him down quite a bit. Joe's problem with injuries, and it's always been ridiculous. It's never strain injuries, is it? It's some it's going out on England duty and your knee exploding, and it's things have been absolutely unavoidable. But he's a perfect professional. He recovers, he comes back. He clearly trusts himself to do the job when he can. Obviously, he hasn't been fit enough to play this season, because this must be the first time he's been fit enough to play, because otherwise when he plays like that you would play him. He's a fantastic footballer. He's a great servant to the club. He's the great, you can't call it a tragedy because we know what actual tragedies look like, but the great disappointment of Joe's career is that he's never played as often as he could have, or as often as he should have, or as often as you'd want him to, because of how unfortunate he's been with injuries. But when he's fit, he's as good as centre-back, he's as good as defender as you're going to get. And Joe, as a centre-back, he should have been our first choice centre-back for a decade. But you get the injuries, and that can't be avoided. So he will never let you down, and he didn't again. And he is a great out ball as well, because he has got a better cross than he's given credit for. He's always a threat. So I think that was an assist, because I don't think it touches anyone else anywhere near him. So quite right. Yes.
Our statistician in the corner tells us it was an assist.
Quite right as well. It's the least he deserves. It would have been nice to see him get a goal, obviously, at some point.
I think he's reserving that for like a Champions League final or something. It can't come in like in a meaningless game, can it? He's got to save it up for it.
He'll score in the Champions League final and just sub himself and walk off the pitch. Retire at that point.
Looking over to the other flank then, Josh, Milos Kerkez has got a fair bit of criticism, it's fair to say, probably over the past few months. And I think some of it has been unfair. I think he has maybe been a scapegoat a little bit at times. It's, clear to see he's not been the player that he was at Bournemouth. But I think maybe some of his performances have received a little bit of unfair criticism. I thought he was really good yesterday. I think, again, not a particularly flash performance, but just does what he needs to do, keeps Bowen really quiet. And again, really positive for him to maybe start getting into a little bit of rhythm.
Yeah, I think he's generally been unfairly criticised for the most part. I think he hasn't been even near as problematic as people have pointed out. I think he goes to ground a little bit mad. I think sometimes he can look a bit panicked on the ball and that, but he's not like, a legit problem for that. One of the reasons Liverpool are losing games or something like that. I don't think it's. And I've had a lot of sympathy towards Kerkez, because he's one of the players that you can definitely say is not getting used how he got used at Bournemouth. I said on a show recently, can't remember what one was. He said, like, how many times he got to the byline this season? Picture Bournemouth Kerkez, and you picture the byline, you picture cutbacks, and he hasn't really done that this season for Liverpool, and that's because he's never really there. And Gakpo is impossible to connect with. He's a difficult player to link with, Gakpo. So the Bournemouth version of Kerkez that we've become accustomed to, we haven't really seen that version of him this season. But I think a lot of that is a tactical thing, and when you actually allow him to move away from the build-up, which we did in this game because West Ham didn't press us, so it was mostly a game in the attacking half. Damian's pointed out that it was a bit of a training game, a bit of a tune-up game for us. He looks better, and I don't think that's a surprise. So if you can find a way to just get him higher, get him overlapping more, get him to the byline more, and move him away from the build-up bit a little bit, he'll look great. And bear in mind as well, he's 21, I think. So, he's younger than Kwanzaa. Give him a bit of time, like.
Yeah. Josh mentioned Gakpo, Damian, and I just want to touch on him before we move on to looking ahead to Wednesday. But I feel a little bit sorry for him. I understand, I take Josh's point. He can be frustrating to watch. That whole thing about him cutting inside, and it's become a little bit of a joke now, hasn't it? That's what he's going to do. And listen, to be fair to him, before this season, you'd say it worked quite a lot of the time. That is his signature move. And
with the number of goals, justified it. Yeah.
Yesterday he gets a goal and an assist. The manager keeps him on. And I think that is probably why, in spite of his frustrating moments, the manager does have faith in him, because he does produce. And I think, you saw what it meant to him when he scored that goal. I think it wasn't just about the collective, the team. I think he realises that, maybe he's been getting a little bit of stick, and was just nice for him to have that moment yesterday. Yeah,
good player. I like him. I understand he does look a bit awkward, and he suffers also the fact that people are then go, well, if we had Diaz here, and how sexy does Diaz look when he gets the ball, and he legs it 100 mile an hour, and he controls it, and he moves Liverpool up the pitch, and he can go left and right and all that.
But a lot of people were saying similar things about Diaz when he was
exactly that. Yeah, exactly that, and that's the point, isn't it? So he's a lot more steady than that type of player. He's never going to be that type of player. If he's scoring the goals, he justifies his style, doesn't he? And then that was hugely the case last season. And then because the team isn't working as well as it might do, neither's he. And also, not just all the team's faults, don't get me wrong. He hasn't, been as good. But he put a shift in yesterday, didn't he? And he does. Took his goal great, it meant a lot to him. Justified himself staying on the pitch. Sound, nice one. Steady, you know what you're getting. And someone who would be a very, very valuable squad player for Liverpool in a season if they were going for the Championship, or they were going for the Champions League, or hoping to finish, in the top four. And I think that we will, and, we're going to be competing for that. And that doesn't mean that he's your player all the time, because that could be a bit predictable. And that's what I was talking about before. Could you get Ekatike over there? And do you need a bit of variance sometimes? So that's a question I've got, and I don't really know what the answer to that is, because you would then see the value of the fact that Ekitike might not track back as much or might not be as reliable in the shape of the team when you haven't got the ball and stuff like that. And I think for that reason, he's coming for a bit more criticism than he might have done. And going back to the Kirkes, I just think it's a question of finding the balance with him. What a flying machine. Everybody wanted to sign him. All our rivals were gutted that we got him. You look at the left back, the greatest left back in Liverpool history. He's coming to the end of his Liverpool career, and then you've just got this next thing off the block, and it's absolutely fantastic. And it's just a question, I feel, that he's been possibly a little overmoted. And there's been times when he's committed himself too much, but there's been a number of games this season, and he was at fault at Newcastle when he scored. But other than that, had a good game, and he played well against Arsenal. When they were going to try and bomb you, but he stood his ground. And yesterday he was winning all the tackles he should be winning, and being an obstacle for when they were coming. And if he just concentrates on that, and they find the right balance of like, well, okay, he does all those basic things right, and then he picks his moments and gets them right. Instead of it being constantly his game where Liverpool are constantly committed, and there's a gap. If it's a question of they've got it sound, they've got it boxed off, and then this fella's got this trick he can play, and then with the moments right and the ball's right and the team are trying to create a situation. So I'm hugely delighted we signed him, and I'm still glad that we have.
Ian, this has to be a turning point now for Liverpool, and I don't necessarily mean that in terms of they've got to go on and win the league, because I think that would be highly, highly ambitious. Although, as we sort of pointed out earlier, it's very congested in that Premier League. It only takes a couple of wins to drastically change the complexion of the table. But we had a little bit of a false dawn, I think, after Villa and Real Madrid. This now has to be the start of Liverpool just looking like a more cohesive, more professional, more serious football team. Completely.
I mean, this is what I was saying before. You just got to go out and win the next game. Now, just go with probably the same approach against Sunderland. You wouldn't want to tinker with it too much, because what's worked has worked. And, specifically talking about Salah coming back in.
Would you bring him in?
I wouldn't. He's going off to AFCON in a couple of weeks. So the team needs to learn how to play without Salah. I'd bring him on as a sub. He needs to get some game time. But at the moment, I wouldn't bring him back in, because what we're seeing now is what we're going through January with. Because, Salah, if they go deep into AFCON, when do we get him back? First week of Feb, something like that?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think it's maybe slightly earlier than that. But
it runs quite long, doesn't it? And then he's never the same player when he comes back anyway, because it's a whole change of system, and he's, as you said, he's had the whole weight of his nation on his shoulders for 5 weeks. He's expected to drag the whole country to success. So at the moment, I wouldn't bring Salah straight back in. I'd like to see the same team go again and just solidify once again, just to make sure that, okay, we're ingrained in this shape now. Now we can start tweaking. Give Salah 15 minutes at the end when he can come on for Szoboszlai and play in that position rather than his own position. I think.
How do you think he'd react?
I think that's the problem.
I think he's a global superstar, which obviously to get to that level, you've got to have an ego, you've got to have belief in yourself, and I don't mean ego in a Ronaldo-esque sort of what we perceive as being Ronaldo's ego, where it's all about you. You've got to be that focused that you think you are that good. To be that good, you have to believe you're that good, because otherwise it's not going to work. And it will, it probably wouldn't be what he wants to say, but if the manager's had a conversation with him, like, the next 2 games, I'm going to do this, and then we'll rebuild where we are in the spring, basically.
I think the thing is, he's definitely going to start one of the next 2, isn't he? Realistically, he's not going to bench him for 3 straight games. Even if you think he should, I don't think he will. So I think it's a question for the manager maybe of which game would you rather bench him in. If you're going to start him in one of the next 2, do you start him against maybe slightly trickier opposition, but you're at home in Sunderland, or do you start him away?
I would prioritise home games if you're going to give him minutes some way. It would be at home for me. But this is one of the issues that I've wanted to point out lately when it comes to Slot. It feels for me a little bit that his hands are kind of tied, because even if he stumbled across a solution here with Szoboszlai and Gomez locking down the right, you do have that massive shadow of Salah. You just know that he wants to be on the pitch, and it's done it. The ego thing, like, it was the same with Henderson. Jordan Henderson was a player who, by all accounts, according to Jurgen Klopp as well, is not a player who takes particularly well through being benched. Jamie Carragher was the same.
Yeah.
Bobby Fowler, another one. They don't like being benched, it's normal. Yeah. But Salah has that...
If you're good, you won't.
Yeah. But Salah has that superstar status. He's the highest paid player at the club. I don't envy Slot trying to manage that, because you know, it's a delicate one. That.
I don't think it's a straight line. For the reasons that you both said, really, you know, you're asking him like, he's not going to react well to it, and if he's going to sulk, and he would sulk, it's gonna be noticeable. I'll ask you another question. Though, if you ask the Sunderland fans and the Leeds fans, would they like him to see him on the pitch or on the bench? They'd like to see him on the bench. It's not like we've got a player of the arses fell out of here. We've got a very useful player here. And I think as a manager, if you're playing twice a week at the top level, and the medical people can say, listen, no, it's not your fault. It's just basically human anatomy, and you can't be asked to do this. We need you to do us a favour by sitting this one out, please. You know, like massage the ego a little bit.
Manage the situation.
There you go.
The Szoboszlai needs a rest.
It could be that, and then it'd be like, listen, we need to do that. So don't worry, mate. We've got you there. We've got you on there in cases of emergency. Don't get me wrong. This isn't going to be a habit, but we've got 3 games in this number of days, and you're playing in Twickenham. And see, that means, and I know that we're going to get the best you, and we're going to enjoy watching you, and he'll be determined. So then wouldn't he? Like, oh, dear, you leave me out. But I think you just about get away with it if you're managing it there. Now, if that's to the detriment of the team, see you later, Mo. Sorry, mate. I don't want to massage your ego that much. But he's got a lot to offer. And he can be very dangerous. So I think the answer is in between things. And I think you're going to see him in a lot, but out a lot more than you're used to seeing him out. But I don't think they can say, we've now found a solution.
They can't, can't make it a permanent thing for the rest
of the No. I mean, Joe Gomez isn't going to play every game. So there you go. So there's the first thing. And it's not West Ham you're playing every week. No. So there's another thing. So there's other, and all those questions. But
I think this has been the problem of the season, that Slaughter's having to try and transition towards the next version of the team.
While he's still
Salah's still there.
Yeah, and so he'll get that chance. But if you look at the fixtures that we've got before we play Arsenal, there's a lot of them there where you just think, we could 2-0 this in the same way, just gone. And I think Mo's got a lot to offer there. So I think he'll be in on Wednesday. I'll be surprised if he isn't on Wednesday, because I think we've got enough ammo and enough coverage to use him.
Well, this is why I'm not minding.
Yeah, well, neither am I, by the way. So I might, you know, I'm as wrong as often as I'm right, same as anybody else. But it is interesting. I do think it's awkward, and it's unusual. And certainly one man shouldn't run the club or whatever. But if he could stink the dressing room out him if he chose to. And we don't need that, because we could still use him, because he's still got great value. It's not like he's completely past it.
Well, no,
do you know what I mean?
The previous 2 games, I can't even remember what the last 2 games were. I can remember as far back as Eindhoven. Forest, Mo was trying to win the game on his own. Mo was still putting a shift in all the way through the game. He was trying to make things happen. It just wasn't coming off for him.
Yeah, I think because of the wider malaise that Liverpool have been in, inevitably the talk comes up about Salah, and you know, I'm sure he'd be the first to admit he's not been at his best this season, but I do think he does still have a place, absolutely, and I would be surprised if he doesn't start on Wednesday, but who knows, we'll find out in a couple of days. There was a point yesterday, Josh, just going back to the manager for a minute. It was still 0-0, and the fans in the away end were singing his name, and I asked him about it after the game, and you could tell it really meant a lot to him, and he said that, and he said, what makes Liverpool special is that, you know, in the difficult times, that's when you see the support more than ever. And he said, you know, I think the supporters value what I've done previously, and I think that is broadly where most people have been. You know, they've been supportive of him because of what he achieved last season, because they know how good he can be. And it did feel big for him yesterday. It felt like, you know, it's maybe bought him a little bit more time than he might have had things not gone well yesterday.
Yeah, I think he deserves it as well for making those bold changes, you know, just taking Salah out of the team, putting in a centre-half as a full-back, and you get a result on the back of it. So I'm glad that he gets that kind of breathing space almost. And for me, it was, for me, he gets the season as a minimum, unless it gets like absolutely daft, which it kind of did at one point.
It has been.
Yeah. You know, you could see the 10 goals.
And it could quite feasibly go daft again over the next 2 games. I think that's the important thing, isn't it? You know, if they lose to Sunderland, then all of a sudden it's a different proposition again, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's probably going to take you 3 or 4 wins before you can say, right, you're allowed another defeat now, or you're allowed to drop more points now.
Yeah.
In terms of
like when he gets to point out that you know, and I know we have a perspective, especially in the Premier League, that the manager is literally responsible for everything and the buck stops with him and all that sort of thing. I get it, you know, it goes back to like Ferguson, Wenger and all that. But I do think nowadays it's a bit more segmented than that.
No, definitely.
Like for example, I've pointed out recently that the set pieces, Liverpool are -8 for set pieces in the Premier League this season. And Arne Slot doesn't coach set pieces. That's Adam Briggs' job. So if you're -8 in that department, and you know it's kind of nothing to do, but you're losing games and that, you have to. He's taking on some of that criticism from supporters and the wider media and all that sort of thing, when that's technically not his fault, if you get what I mean. So I have a lot of sympathy for him with certain things like set pieces. Liverpool haven't scored from a corner in the Premier League this season yet. I think
that's a ridiculous stat, isn't it?
I think we've had something like 75, and
Yeah.
we haven't scored a single goal yet. And that's, as I said, that's not Slot. Slot's responsible for the open play side, and the open play side has not been particularly good. You know, I'm not defending him in that sense. But for me, when it comes to like changing the manager, you need to know why you're doing it. You need to know what he's responsible for, what he's doing wrong, crucially what the next fella would do differently to improve things.
And especially because he's a head coach rather than the manager, so
There is a difference,
is
exactly.
different.
And
A job title he's comfortable with.
Yeah. And I've been looking at the squad, you know, you're pointing out Gomez and Balance and all that, and I've been thinking like it's a difficult job at the moment. That you know, I know there's some superstars in there, but generally, you know, he hasn't got a right back really. He's found Gomez now. He's had like 2 centre halves for a few weeks. You know, he's got a dwindling star that we've just been talking about, Mo Salah, that he's going to manage the ego of and all that.
I always think with the Gakpo one as well, a lot of people saying take Gakpo out of the team, and I know there's an argument you play Ekitike there, but there's not he doesn't have a second choice left winger in the same way he had last season.
Yeah, technically that fella is a 17-year-old kid.
Yeah.
In younger Mo. So I've just had a lot of sympathy towards him. I think it's far too black and white for me to look at it and go, Liverpool bad, manager bad, sack him. I think there's shades of grey in there, loads of shades of grey in there, and once you kind of consider that context, I think it's understandable the struggles he's kind of, even if some of it is self-inflicted, even if some of it has been him getting a bit carried away in the market, going, yeah, he's where it sound, but like, you know, you just give him a bit of time, especially considering what's happened, you know, Diogo and all that. It's, you know, for me, he gets the season, unless it gets like an absolute abomination, he gets the season for me. And I think there's logic behind that. It's not just an emotional decision. I think there's reasons behind why he's struggling. I'd like to see him, you know, when Salah goes to AFCON, if Liverpool get an extra centre half in, if Liverpool get a wide player that can back up Gakpo in or even replace him or whatever, you know, just sort all that first. Don't worry about the manager. He's just won the league last season. He's not an idiot.
Yeah, I think just to finish off then, Damian, it is quite mad when you look at the table now. I mean, Liverpool, one win has moved them up 4 or 5 places.
Yeah. It was great moving up overnight, wasn't it, without playing?
4 points off second place feels totally insane, really. You know, when you think Manchester City are being talked about as Arsenal's main title contenders, I suppose Chelsea are up there as well, but it is slightly mad that Liverpool have been appallingly bad in terms of the results over the past 2 months.
Yeah.
And yet, quite conceivably, when things finish on Saturday, they're back in the top 4.
Mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
The standards that go with Liverpool, I've got to say, by the way, I completely, totally agree with what Josh said about the manager. And you've got to have a plan. And that set piece thing, that's incredible. I didn't realise it was that bad.
Yeah. We've conceded 9 and we've scored 1.
Yeah.
And it wasn't from a corner.
And I think if he gets back to it, I kind of mentioned it at the start, really, of the back of the control, because there's been a lot of goals. The transition thing, we've been letting goals in, but we just didn't let that type of goal in. No. It didn't even look like that last season. And of course, people get on to it and all that. But and I don't necessarily mean to be completely as cautious as we were at West Ham, but if that degree of caution is brought into this team and we're managing the situation, then there's a lot of games that Liverpool can tick off here. Now, we could have said that a couple of weeks ago. We said that before we played Man United, and look at that. Said that before we played Forest, and look at that. So this, you know, so I'm very mindful of the fact that there's a number of times this season where, talking with me mates and that, I've said, no, this is it, look at the run, look at the fixtures. And so this is a massive week that's coming up. And by the end, you know, of the week that's coming up, there's 2 games there, and Liverpool could quite easy being in the top four, and that is such a massive thing. I mean, probably fifth would be enough this season, the way it goes in the Champions League and how that all works and that. But and then that's the trigger. Liverpool's trigger point will be: do they think they'll finish in the Champions League? And any sympathy and or whatever, they'll just be a maths equation. Does it look like we're going to finish in the top 4 or 5? If not, you're out. If so, yes, and we'll see how we get on, and we'll take it from there. These figures about how far Liverpool, I can't believe we're as close as we are to the top after the worst run in 70 odd years, isn't it? That is even older than me and Ian. Do you know what I mean? I can't remember us being that bad.
No, we've never been that bad in my life.
No, exactly. So that is some statement for us, isn't it?
Yeah, especially since we lived through Hodgson.
Yeah, well, yeah. So it contextualises it, doesn't it? You know what I mean? It felt much worse with Hodgson.
Yeah.
Yeah, Liverpool are in an equation if they just want to get back to the basics, and if they just want to do the simple things right, and that really then is like, they don't want to play to the pinnacle, and they don't want to play at the peak to where Klopp was playing and entertaining and winning the league and whatever have you. They've got to forget all that for now. They've just literally got to do each hurdle each week. Are we good enough to win on Wednesday? Yeah. Do we just basically make no mistakes? We were talking before about, you mentioned before about the 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Go through the game in 15 minutes. So it won't surprise you, Miarful was a man of many words, right? So if we were playing in games, played a lot of amateur football, he was like, just do it like your driving test. Don't make any mistakes in the first 15 minutes and all of a sudden you're nearly there.
Yeah.
Don't make any mistake in the next 15. Now, we've got players who are good enough, if we don't make the mistakes, to punish the teams of the other way. And if we just do that methodically, you'll see Liverpool in the right area of the table. You'll see Liverpool in the Champions League places. So just a bit more of the caution, and I hope the manager's learned a bit. I think he was I wouldn't want to see him change wholeheartedly. I really like the way he talks, like the way he presents himself. But at the start of the season, when we were winning games in the last minute and we were conceding more goals, Carragher's head was falling off. Carragher was right. He wasn't completely right. No one ever is, are they? Do you know what I mean? Who am I? You know, to question the manager that won the league for Liverpool. But there was elements of what Carragher was saying which was making complete sense to everybody. And we were kind of just going, aren't we great? We always win in the last minute. We are Liverpool, isn't that great? Well, it's caught us out. And then we've still tried to do the same sort of thing. So I do think if we just learn to be a lot more controlling, which is what Slot was so good at, and was the one noticeable thing from Jurgen's team to the same players, I think that's where we are, and we'll be all right.
Yeah, well, big week, as Damian said, coming up for Liverpool. Sunderland on Wednesday, Leeds United on Saturday. A big week for the manager. But it's nice to just take the weight off with a win. Nice to be sat talking about a win. Thank you very much to Ian, to Josh and to Damian for joining us. Thanks to Andy for looking after the audio, Paddy for looking after the images, and thank you very much for watching and for listening. We'll see you soon.